Hello and welcome along to another new session. So this is it. This is Beginner's Guide to Painting Gundam Part 3, and what we have in front of us are some of the parts that we're going to be painting. These are the colours I've got off to me right. The rest of the parts, and they're on crocodile clips such as this. So let's have a quick look at what we were doing in the last episode or installment, what have you. We got to the point where we had pre-shaded and we're ready to paint this shield, but like I said in the previous video, it was a bit of a mistake on my part that I ended up, you know, messing up the footage, but never mind, we can do it with the shield that we've got in front of us now. But this is how it came out. I'll just cut away and then we can have a look at the shield up close. As you can see, this was the finished result of the shield. It was, I don't know how well you can pick it up, it was pre-shaded with a grey. That was just a Tamiya grey on the back. There was a small amount of masking, some metallics done, some simple hand painting as well. Nothing super spectacular, but it did the job for what I wanted it for. I ended up putting these small photo etch detailing parts in, and then I deckled it and put a final top coat on, which was the Johnson's Clear, and that was pretty much it. Oh, a small amount of panel lining. I used the one of the Gundam markers, I think it was the grey one. It might have been that one. Yeah. It was that one, the grey Gundam marker, and that was pretty much it. So it was quite a simple job, but like I said, I messed up the recording a little. Well, not so much the recording, the editing process and where it was, and ended up deleting stuff. But now we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to this. So I'm going to pull back out again, and then we'll start painting. Okay, so let's just go through some of the paints we're going to be using. Right then, your eyes aren't deceiving you. What this is here is a pink primer, which I made myself, and it's very easy to make. You just take some of the polyurethane surface primer, and you add a bit of, this isn't the Scarlet, but all I added was a bit of the Vallejo Model Air Scarlet into this pot. And I just sprayed that as normal, and primed all the parts all in pink. These are the ones that we're going to have in the red colour. Then what I did, I used this is Games Workshop, I think it might be Mephistone Red, and that's the darker shade that you can see there. I pre-shaded all these parts, and for the darker red parts that I'm going to be painting, I used Tamiya XF64 Red Brown, and that's got the same primer on. It looks different just because of the pre-shade, and that's for the darker reds, which are going to be corn red. So these red parts here are going to be painted with, this is just Tamiya's XF7 flat red. The more orangey red is going to be painted with Games Workshop Blood Red, and the dark parts, which I've just said, are going to be painted with Games Workshop, I think it's Corn Red. But after that, after each one has had their first coat, they're going to be highlighted, and they're all going to get the same highlight. So whatever's left in the colour cup, I'm going to add a bit of thinner, just the X20A, and then I'm going to add a little bit of orange, and all that's going to do is, like I said, lighten the colour. We're not going to use white because the Sotheby's red, not pink, and by adding white to the red colour, all you'll get is a horrid shade of pink, and it won't be very nice. Hence we either add orange, or we could, if you wanted to, use yellow, but I think yellow is a bit light. And what this does, using the same colour for the highlights, it'll bring all the tones together, so there's not much of a massively stark difference between the reds. They're visible, but it's a very subtle change. So there you go, primed with pink primer, pre-shaded with either the Mephisto red or the red brown, and then the top coats of X7, blood red and corn red, and that should be it. So let's go over to the spray bay now, and we will put some paint down. Okay, so we're at the spray bar now. Let's start painting. Right then, the reason why I used pink primer was because obviously painting everything red, I didn't want to prime it in white. That's because I didn't want everything to be very bright red, and that's what white primer would have done. It would have made the reds very, very red. And with the pink, as you can see, we're almost there, and I've only put on a few thin layers, and you can still see the pre-shading coming through. And that's what I like about using primers, that what's the word I'm looking for? Best suit your paint, and a pre-shade which also helps you along in the painting process. So for instance, like we did on the shield beforehand, the white shield, the new Gundam shield, we didn't use a black for the pre-shade, we used a grey, and that meant you just had to put less layers on. Now less layers is good, because less layers means you don't run the risk of putting too much paint on and having an orange peel effect start on your paint. Let's see, we'll come this way now. So start off light dusting, even though this part just here is not going to be visible, everything gets painted. Why not? You know, it's all part of the shield. And just in case, there's been certain instances with the back skirt. I was watching a video of somebody who painted a Sazabi, and because they didn't paint it in its entirety, when it come to assembly, there were parts that were left visible, i.e. they hadn't painted them and they were still plastic, so they had to go back and do them again, which is pretty pointless. So paint everything. See, just a few thin layers, and it's very nearly there. These are the beam sabers that go inside the wrists. These won't take long to do, but like with everything else, just take your time and make sure you get nice even coverage over everywhere. Turn it around to get the best angles. Another thing that I had difficulty with was a few weeks back, the weather in the UK was really, really hot, and it delayed my spraying because I just couldn't get any spraying done, because everything seemed to be drying in the colour cup and on the tip of the needle, and it just made it really hard to do. But I just got to top up my colour cup and a little bit more painting. This is already pre-thinned. I brought these bottles a while back and just decanted the paint into them with a bit of thinner, and I'm just going to use the old blowback technique to give it a stir. It's as good as any. That should be okay. Just keep that to one side. Let's do the beam saber. So what I might do now, I might, well I will do, what I'll do, you'll watch me continue painting, but I'll just do it at speed. I'll speed up the film, before we move on to the next colours, and I'll show you how I go about those, which is basically exactly the same as what I'm doing here. But I hope you can see how much easier it is with a complementary undercoat and pre-shade, how little amount of paint that you have to put on. It really does fly on. Just the last couple of pieces in this colour, and then we'll move on. Okay then, what we're going to do now, you can see I've got a little bit left in the colour, might not be able to pick that up. So what we're going to do is highlight the parts that we've just painted. So this is really easy. What we're going to do now is just add a little bit of orange, roughly about a third again. A few drops, 1, 2, 3, just to get the colour lighter, which that certainly has done. Just give a little mix. So I'll sit on the stirrer. Just when I thought I had everything ready, I've got nothing ready whatsoever, so I just have to do it this way. Little test, blow through the red. See, that's so much lighter now. Take my needle cap off because I had a bit of a spit there. Get me a cotton bud, and we can use that just to make sure it's off. Right. So this is all it is very basic highlighting. So we're going to come in with the airbrush and we're going to pretty much aim for the centre of your pre-shade. You should still see the pre-shade coming through, but this highlight just accentuates the pre-shade and just gives you a bit more tonal variation in the paint. And for some reason it does show up better once you get a contrast change when you put the clear coat on your varnish. It really does make it pop. So you don't need much, it is a very subtle effect. Okay, so all those parts have been painted and highlighted. These two might look very similar as opposed to these, but once they've had your varnish on, which we'll talk about in a second, the contrast changes, and then you can see the difference. So again, it was just your first colour, then it was followed up with what was in the remainder of the colour cup with some orange added. Okay then, so once you've done all your painting, you really do want to protect it. Now, I like to protect things with a gloss coat. So you can use anything as like an acrylic coat, which are the Vallejo do one, Games Workshop do one, but what I like to use is this, and this is the Pledge multi-surface wax with clear, and it's a relatively cheap way of doing lots of varnishing, and it's easy to work with, it's consistent. You can even use a cellulose based one if you want. That's a bit more harsh and requires a cellulose thinner or lacquer thinners. But if you stick to the acrylics, you can't go wrong because you can get them out of your airbrush easier, etc. So what we'll do now, we'll give these a bit more time to dry off and cure, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to just run through the stage of protecting your paintwork that you've spent time on, and it's looking okay to me so far. So let's cut away now, give this some time to dry, and when we come back, we'll be back in the spray booth and we'll get some varnishing done. Okay then, so these have actually had 24 hours to cure, but give them around a minimum of 4 hours for the paint to go off. I've got a small amount of the clear coat in here, the Johnson's Clear, and what we're going to do now is go through the pieces one by one, giving a light dusting to start off with, so when you come back the next time you've got the varnish has got a little bit extra to grip onto. So here we go. Excuse the compressor. Alright, just a light sheen and then leave it. I'm just going to turn on my extractor, so excuse the noise. See it being sucked away straight away. And again, just a very light coat for the first coat, and then that's all you need. So we'll just speed this up now, and we'll keep going through the parts one by one, and we'll get a nice, fairly heavy layer of varnish on there, because that's how I like to do it, and we'll have a look at them at the end. Okay then, so these have had, I think it was 4 light coats of gloss varnish, and they look alright. Now these, I would definitely let these cure for another at least 24 hours before you start doing anything with them, for example decaling or panel lining, but we will come to that later on in the stage. So those are nice. We're going to leave those to one side, and now we're going to move on to the metallics.